So I'm probably not going to be able to get through most of this video. I'm sure most of what we're going to react to, for the most part, is going to be in the beginning portion of this, as it was laid out on Twitter from Jeremy, the Quartering, and a few others. This has been a very emotionally fueled episode by Ben Shapiro. We're going to get through portions of it. I'll cut this up and make it quick so we can go through the hot spots. I already kind of skimmed through the video to see that.
We discuss conservative comedian Steven Crowder's attacks on Jeremy Boring and the Daily Wire. A runaway girl is kept from her parents because they supposedly misgendered her, and the cost is horrific. And Joe Biden says he has no regard for the decade. And Steve and I had always been very friendly. I know Jeremy was even friendly. I was Steven's first lawyer. I helped negotiate his contract with Fox News. It's going all the way back. There's got to be at least over a decade.
I would not really say that Steven has attacked anyone. Instead of just like, I mean, you could say he exposed the terms of the contract. I wouldn't go to say he's been personally attacking anybody. I mean, the phone call you could say, but he didn't release everything publicly.
And Steve and I had always been very friendly. I know Jeremy was even friendlier with Steven, had counseled him in very rough times. I had personally attempted to intervene when Steven was demonetized in June 2019 on YouTube. I actually sounded off so loudly that the people at YouTube reached out.
I don't think anybody doesn't believe that they're friends or had a very good working relationship. I don't think anyone's questioning that.
Out to me, and Susan Wojcicki, the head of YouTube, got on the phone with me, and I reamed her out over demonetizing Steven. And I hope it made a difference. You know, look, I think that Steven is an incredibly talented comedian. I also think that what he is doing to my friend Jeremy Boring right now is one of the most disgusting things I have ever seen in politics. It really is one of the ugliest things I've ever seen.
With all of the stuff that's going on, like, this is like, what is your perspective, Ben? If this is like the most ugly thing you've seen in politics compared to everything else that's going on around, maybe you don't think big tech is a bad thing. Maybe you don't think the absolute violation that has been occurring to most people in this country for, I mean, at least in the last 3 years since COVID, the great uprising, I wouldn't say uprising, the amount and volume in which how many violations have taken place, in which our government has whether failed us, misled us, outright lied, or has committed crimes and atrocities against everyday, average working people.
In order to understand what's happening, I think you have to understand a couple of things. So, for those who missed the story, basically, we offered Steven a term sheet, a non-binding term sheet. A non-binding term sheet is exactly what it sounds like. It is a list of terms for a proposed negotiation for a contract. And then negotiation happens, then you come to a final contract. That is.
I'm begging Ben to talk about big tech. I am dying for you to just specifically talk about the points that Crowder brought up about big tech. Why don't we hit that first instead of nailing all the emotional points? Like, what? Let's just keep watching.
Days with the Blaze. And so we sent him over a non-binding term sheet for $50 million over the course of 4 years with an additional 2-year option at $25 million. That is, as it sounds like, a lot of money. But we thought that Steven is worth.
Again, all about the money. This is all dinging and going right at the money aspect. They're trying to project onto Crowder, I believe, the accusations that are coming for them. Even Candace was upfront about how her entire audience was out there saying, oh, you're fraudulent if you don't approach this subject. You're fraudulent if you don't talk about it. I mean, bro, all I see right now is projection.
Worth it because Steven is, again, an incredibly talented guy with a very, very large following. And if you want to hear the actual terms of the term sheet, all you have to do is go to the description on this particular video or head on over to YouTube, and you can see my business partner, Jeremy Boring, read the terms word for word. Steven's original video in which he attacked us. So this week, Steven attacked
the money, bro.
Jeremy Boring and attacked
on.
the Daily Wire and suggested that if we had essentially offered him an enslavement contract that would have robbed him of all of his freedom and made him subject to the whims of big tech and all the rest of this kind of bullshit. And it's just not true. Jeremy unlike Stephen, read the entire text of the term sheet on the air and goes through it piece by piece and explains exactly how it works. And in short, all the contract says is, we are offering you this gigantic sum of money. And if you start to lose money for the company and for yourself, because you lose YouTube, for example, then we both lose money, so you lose some money.
That's his whole point. It's not being held to the whims of the tech overlords. His issue is exactly that. It is not the money amount behind it. Man, this is falling on deaf ears.
Because this is typically how contracts work. On this show, for example, if I lose advertisers and the revenue of the show goes down, then I lose revenue personally because the revenue of the show has gone down. So again, if you want the details, the legalistic details of all this.
I wonder if that's really all it means for Ben, is making as much money as possible. Not carrying your ideas as far as they can carry you, but simply as far as the dollar carries them.
You can check out Jeremy's video. It is absolutely comprehensive and irrefutable because, again, he reveals, I've never seen anybody else do this, he reveals literally the entirety of the what was supposed to be confidential term sheet that Stephen decided to partially leak for his own benefit. And this is the part that's really ugly. Okay, so the part that's really ugly is the betrayal of friendship. So last night, Stephen Crowder, in response to Jeremy reading.
See, and he's just going to go in and talk about the phone call again. Like, I understand that part, bro, but like.
We here at Daily Wire do both things. In fact, we try to generate a profit so we can continue to make a difference. And it turns out when you lose money, you don't actually have the wherewithal or the resources in order to do things, like spend enormous quantities of money making What is a Woman by Matt Walsh, or making The Greatest Lie Ever Sold by Candace Owens, or funding the investigative reporters who shift the Virginia.
The investigative reporters from Daily Wire, I would say, is a joke. Most of the investigative reporting only happens by Project Veritas anymore. I can't, off the top of my head, remember the last thing an investigative journalist from the Daily Wire had any kind of expose that was even on close to the merit at what Project Veritas is accomplishing.
Virginia gubernatorial race by uncovering what happens in Loudoun County.
And this is like him going and being like, our accomplishments, our accomplishments, our accomplishments. Matt Walsh did the same thing on his story. I got him sent to me by my girlfriend earlier. Just a load of like, look at all what we've done, and Stephen's trying to tear it down.
Or put out good information each and every day to rebut the evils of the Biden administration, or spend the millions of dollars it takes to sue the Biden administration to stop the OSHA vax mandate, or any of that kind of stuff. They cost money. And in order to make that money, you have to run a business. So you can't run a charity for your hosts. That apparently is what Stephen wanted, but Stephen decides that this is, supposedly his story is, that he was so offended by the term sheet, he just had to speak out. He had to stand up for the little guy, right? Okay.
Yeah. And if he goes in here and says anything about them being the little guy, I'm going to stop immediately.
There are a bunch of problems with this. I was willing to stay silent on all of this, generally speaking, and not get into the weeds and not get into Stephen's personal conduct until the point when he personally recorded a phone call with my best friend, Jeremy Boring, and then proceeded to release that publicly. That is disgusting. It is disgusting, and it is vile on a pure human level.
So what's Ben's opinion about Jeremy calling their low-end non-celebrity workers wage slaves, and how they tier their contracts to own out in perpetuity? This is just sad for me, honestly. I had a lot of respect for these guys, man.
Jeremy, again, has gone out of his way for Stephen more times than I can count. He has counseled Stephen personally. And Stephen decided, in premeditated fashion.
They're talking as if Stephen owes them something.
That he was going to tape his friend and then release it to grow his email list. It is that simple. And I'll show you the timeline here. Because the case here is that, again, this term sheet that he got, he was so offended by it, he just had to speak up. He couldn't be held back any longer. He had to speak up on behalf of the little guy. Okay, I'm going to read you the timeline of what happened during this negotiation.
You can see it. They're all visibly agitated. Him, Walsh, Candace. They're so visibly agitated.
And when he decided to tape his friend, his supposed friend, Jeremy Boring. So here is the timeline here. October 5th, 2022 is when we sent Stephen the supposedly evil term sheet. So evil. So you would imagine that if the term sheet was that evil, October 6th, he couldn't have held back. How could you guys do this? It would be just October 5th is when we sent him this term sheet offering him $50 million over 4 years plus a 2-year extension for 25 mil. Basketball player type money. On November 2nd, Stephen called up Jeremy and said, I want $30 million a year and a bunch of changes to the term sheet. I'm not going to redline the term sheet. I'm not going to edit the term sheet. I just want you to send me a brand new offer. On November 6th, 4 days later, remember, this is after he's already sounded off. He's got the term sheet. He's had it for a month. November 6th was election night. You'll recall, if you're a Daily Wire fan, Stephen Crowder appeared on our election night coverage. Everything was very friendly. Everything was very chummy. Everything was great. November 14th or thereabouts, we decided that we couldn't meet his demands.
I mean, to think that, like, he didn't take time to process these different offers and what was actually on the term sheet. He probably took some time to come to terms with what he had seen. He probably wanted to initiate some kind of plan, I would imagine, before ripping this lid off. But I will say the timeline does give way to be like, why did it take you 4 or 5 months to come forward with this? Or maybe is there something else down the pipe that we've not been shown yet or we haven't seen yet? A lot of this I feel is still up in the air. Only time's going to tell, I think, on this.
His demands were not rational in business terms, that he wanted too much money, and all the rest of it. So we let him know.
It's about the money. I want to know if these terms were about he wanted the perpetuity removed and he wanted outright ownership of his content. And I wonder if as well, he wanted removed some of the content strike, boycott, and ban penalties that were listed in Section 8 of that contract.
No hard feelings. We're still friends, just like we do in every contract negotiation. As Tim Pool said on his show last night, we've had contract negotiations with Tim, and we disagreed, and we went our separate ways, and we still like Tim still likes us, and all the rest. Okay, so November 14th or thereabouts, we talked.
See, and he's going to leave out the part about why Tim disagrees. It's not about being cordial. It's about someone thinking and believing that we are on the same side, fighting the same things, going at the same crux issues. And he was thinking that he was going to help you guys by bringing his 6 million subscribers, and I'm sure there's crossover there, into the Daily Wire. And what do you get? You get them ripping him apart about the contract and the money. They are trying to be sure that they inundate their audience with Stephen Crowder wanted more money. If you go and look at Stephen Crowder's second video, I didn't want to do this, where he plays back on the Talk Boy, the recording, what does the description say? It was never about money. This isn't about money. It's a lot of smoke and mirrors, a lot of rain dance. I just wanted to review and react to a bit of this clip. I know how the rest of it goes. Doesn't it make you feel a bit uncomfortable seeing how agitated and emotionally riled up everybody from the Daily Wire is? I'm just curious to see how much more information comes out for this. That's all for today because my time's running short. Peace out.